Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 4 of NYX From the Ashes, written by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing and art by Francesco Mortarino. But before we dive into the story, I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment to help the channel grow. So with that said, this issue opens with Prodigy roaming the streets as he thinks about what his next move should be. He states that the problems were pretty clear from the outset, for their culture was rooted in repeated, ongoing, and at this point systemic violence. Then Prodigy went on to state that they have had a handful of historic activists and leaders, but not a single one without an alias, for each of them used their Krakoan name. Unless one counts Moira MacTaggart, the one who tried to kill the rest of them, and in his case, she nearly succeeded. And even when the humans weren't bringing war to them, they decided to bring war to themselves. And because of that, in the end, there will be generations of mutants stuck in a binary choice, either integrate or dominate. Now this literally caused some mutants to fight themselves, trying to determine which one to do. Until finally, both sides had to admit their failures and choose a third way, separation. But to their horror, they still failed, at least for everyone who didn't want to leave this dimension. So then, mutants are beings who are untrusted to wield their own power and be among other people. This means they tend to become homeless with no hope of returning to the only place they ever lived without fear. So with that said, what does that leave them with? A quiet part of their life they don't share with anyone, where they celebrate what they feel inside. Where that community still live, somewhere hidden, secret, and safe. Now as Prodigy settled himself into his bed to sleep, the next morning we pick up with Prodigy sitting at his job dealing with things he wants nothing to do with. And as he sat there, Kamala arrived at his desk with her prediction of who the Krakoan could be. And some of the pieces of evidence she used to make her point was a page from Prodigy's yearbook from back when he was in Charles's school. And the thing that was important about this page was one of the mutants' power profiles fits exactly with the Krakoans. For Julian also had telekinesis, a green energy signature, and the same body build. Plus, Julian's psych profile was all over the place, and that tracks with the wacko she fought at the river. Which was something Prodigy couldn't disagree with, because he was fully aware that Julian had a tough life. So with this compelling argument laid out before Prodigy, Kamala then went on to say she doesn't just have an ID on the Krakoan, but she may also have a clue about his motive. And then she broke it down by saying the Krakoan first hit the subway, and at first she thought he was just targeting random people. But once she looked closer, Kamala noticed that at each location the Krakoan attacked, someone in the city government died. That would mean that the Krakoan is making a lot of noise to hide a string of very quiet assassinations. But see, that isn't everything, because Kamala also points out that the attacks seem to be on a timer, for each attack was made with the exact amount of time between them. Which would mean the next attack should take place today, and with the help of a map, a marker, the Morlocks, and Sophie, Kamala was able to find the next location. Which so happened to be Times Square, and Kamala was dead set on stopping it. So with everything out there, Kamala just had one more thing to say, and that was she wanted to ask Prodigy to help de-escalate the situation, friend to friend, in hopes of avoiding the battle to come. But due to his comfortable life and job with the school, he refused to damage the careful balance he worked hard to create. Now, as you may have guessed, this was not what Kamala wanted to hear, because up to this point in the story, Prodigy was trying so hard to stay in the good graces of humans despite the way they treated his people in the open. So with that said, Kamala stormed out of Prodigy's office and took hold of Sophie's hand, and on the next page, we see our two heroes rushing to meet with the Krakoan. Now as they did that, we then hop back over to Prodigy still sitting at his desk thinking about everything Kamala just said. And while he goes over his thoughts, we get a narration saying, regardless of intention or circumstance, mutant history oscillates between two states, which, despite differences in methodology, have been observed as morally equivalent. Whether they were based on if Charles was right or if Magneto was right. Now can either of them truly be right if both are wrong? Has our need to operate in these states blinded us to any other path? Because a lot of cultures have a concept of brotherhood, but only mutants have to reclaim the word as evil. And on the next page, we see the Krakoan flying high over the city with his ability on full display as he floats shards of metal debris around him. But regardless of the danger before Kamala, Miss Marvel stood ready for what was about to transpire. But before the battle kicked off, Kamala placed Sophie onto the ground and told her to listen to her closely because there was something Kamala truly had to say, and that was, Kamala had a very strong suspicion that Sophie had somehow been involved with the Krakoan. And then Kamala went on to say she thought Sophie may have even become intentionally friends with her to lure her here. To make this happen. And one piece of proof that Kamala had to prove it was the fact that Sophie had a yearbook for the school year where she was supposed to be dead. But regardless of all that, whether Sophie knew it or not, they had actually become friends. And then Kamala went on to say, she doesn't know how many friends Sophie had that weren't related to her, but friends tell each other the truth. So with the air clear between the two women, Miss Marvel then went on to say there is still a better way forward if Sophie just chooses it. Now following that, we then jump over to Empath watching everything play out, and on Clockwork, he tells the rest of Sophie's sisters that it is showtime. And as planned, the rest of the sisters established their connection with Sophie, and once they were one, they then went to ask if she was planning on switching sides on them, to which Sophie said it was complicated, as doubt entered her mind. So as Sophie stood conflicted, her sisters went on to try to remind her why they were doing all of this to begin with. Because during the fall of the House of X, the humans took everything from them, and now they believe they deserve revenge. With this conflict playing out between the sisters, we then transitioned back over to the Krakoan beating the heck out of Miss Marvel. But as they fought, Kamala kept trying to appeal to his better nature, but the last thing the Krakoan, better known as Julian aka Hellion, want to hear was a word from a person he perceived as a mutant traitor. And as he held Miss Marvel down, the Krakoan looked right at the camera and told New York to hear him, as he said Krakoa might be gone, but they are not, and the world belongs to Homo Superior. And on top of that, they are the gods now, and they are furious. Now as all this continued, Kamala still tried to plead to her friend to help and change her ways, but all Sophie said was that she was sorry, but they had been down this road before and she knew where it led. And all Kamala has to do is give up and allow the Krakoan to win and they will take care of the rest. So with that out there, the rest of the sisters jumped into the conversation and stated the truth is simple, they tried to coexist but failed, so now they either fold or they rule. And with a thunderous blow, the Krakoan nailed Miss Marvel with a mean hook that sent her crashing into the ground and knocking her out cold. With the battle all but over, we get another narration from Prodigy's notes, and this one goes as follows: it is the assumed human position to make assumptions about their kind. If it is not Sentinels, it's Reavers. If it's not Reavers, then it is Purifiers. Because everyone has a reason to hunt them, but when they fight back, they chase them into dark corners. And then they want to say our concern is the dark. So then they demand light, authority, mutant towns, prisons, and finally camps. And on top of that, if the mutants ever fought for themselves, then they would be called the Evil Brotherhood. If they fight for humans, then they are a defunct dream. And then if they hold all actions and simply learn to disappear more cleverly, aren't they then the ones living in fear? So with that narration coming to an end, on the next page we see Prodigy finally sticking up for his friends, and better yet his people, as he arrives on the scene. And the first thing Prodigy tells his old friend Julian is that he knows Julian always wanted to fight him, and he was just about to show him how much he would regret it. So with the battle about to kick off, the sisters thought they could just easily take out Prodigy with a flurry of psychic attacks, but while they were skipping class, Prodigy was picking up new tricks. And one of those tricks was the resist method, or the red triangle protocol. With that technique on display, each sister received a kickback of their own attack, which led them to fall onto the floor. So with them on the ground, Prodigy then turned his attention back to Julian and prepared himself for something I never really expected Prodigy to be able to do. And with the help of a rope, Prodigy was able to move like Spider-Man and avoid all of the Krakoan's attacks, right before wrapping him up and driving him into the ground. And right before they dropped, the Krakoan asked what was left for them to fight for, because A, Krakoa is gone, and B, even Charles was taking the fight to the humans. But that is when Prodigy responded by saying it wasn't Charles's dream to burn, for it belongs to all of them. So, with the council gone, every mutant left is now the custodians, and mutant culture isn't Krakoa, mutant culture was the X-Men. So with the Krakoan defeated, Empath just watched on in hatred as Prodigy helped Miss Marvel up. Now following this battle, reporters and news crews rushed to the scene. Now the narrator went on to say that they told Prodigy he had been on the news for 18 hours, and their battle was nationally televised. And to make it worse, Prodigy heard from his lawyer that the paperwork was already in place, and Julian would be sent to Greymalkin, the prison from Uncanny X-Men, before the end of the year. So after all this chaos, the mutant race has found themselves back in the same binary trap set between evil and good. A plan Prodigy disputed, but which seems designed to ensure any mutant who tried. Which makes Prodigy begin to suspect they aren't the intended prey. So the question no longer remains what we all are when we are together. It's now about what we make of the moment they've forced and how to take their nightmare and reignite the dream. And with that said, this issue of NYX X-Men comes to an end. But anyway, down in the comment section below, let me know your thoughts about this issue and what predictions you could have moving forward. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.